Now, Kent Woman is calling for more treatment for people with eating disorders to be made available on the NHS. Bulimia made Sam Russell from Canterbury critically ill, but she wasn't seriously underweight. The 27-year-old says she might not be here today if she hadn't paid for private care. And Sam, who contacted BBC Radio Kent with her story, is with me in the studio. Sam, very good morning to you, first of all.
Good morning.
Just tell us what state you were in when you went to the NHS for help originally.
Originally, it was back when I was around about 21, when I first went to my GP and asked for help. And I'd reached the point where I was no longer able to function, really.
Because of bulimia?
Because of the eating disorder.
And just for people who don't understand, that's where you eat food and then you make yourself sick afterwards to get rid of it.
Yeah, completely. Yeah. Although there are other types as well where I didn't even realise you don't necessarily need to make yourself sick as long as you do something to compensate, whether that's starving yourself in between binges. That also classes as bulimia.
Okay. And perhaps excessive exercise as well?
Yeah, excessive exercise, laxatives, diet pills, yeah.
Okay, so you went to your doctor feeling that you needed help. So that you crossed that first bridge, you realised there was a problem.
I realised I had an issue,
And what were you told?
I was told that my weight wasn't really low enough, and I was offered to be referred to a psychiatrist, but that took 4 months for the referral to come through. And I asked for counselling, wasn't offered it. It was pretty much a case of pump me full of pills and see if that did the trick.
So they offered you some help
Yes.
with medication that they felt might help your situation, but nothing to do with the root cause, perhaps,
Not
the
at
problems, the counselling, the psychiatric help was a long time coming.
Yeah, they just really saw it as trying to treat the depression. And seemed to think that that was going to fix everything, whereas in reality this was a problem that I'd had since I was about 10 years old. So it was much more deep rooted than that.
But did they tell you if you were thinner they would have been able to do more? Is that what they told you?
I wasn't actually told that, but after researching it and hearing from a lot of other people that have been in the same situation, that is pretty much the attitude that goes with eating disorders at the moment.
And they do it by what they call a BMI, is it BMI index?
Yeah, BMI, which is your body mass index, and a normal range for a person is between 20 and 25, and it's really not until you hit a BMI of around about 15 where you can expect to receive, inpatient help.
And you're saying today, one of the things you're saying is that you don't have to be, terribly underweight to have an eating disorder.
Not at all, and that's a very common misconception, and I think it's not necessarily helped by the media in that when you see articles about people with eating disorders or television shows about people with eating disorders, it tends to focus primarily on a teenage girl who is 5 stone and on the brink of death, whereas that is a case for some people with eating disorders, but it's certainly not the vast majority.
Well, actually, John Prescott's a good example, isn't it? Because he came out and admitted he had bulimia. Now, looking at John Prescott, who's fairly rotund, you wouldn't say, the last person you would think had an eating disorder would be John Prescott. In fact, all the jokes were going around at the time, weren't they? It was obviously not working, your bulimia, John Prescott. There was all that sort of... and I suppose when that happened, you probably thought, well, at last, somebody who is quite large has said they've got a problem. Completely,
and I applauded him for coming forward with that, because there is still a stigma attached, unfortunately, with eating disorders, and people find it very hard to accept that actually you can be ill, but you might not look like you have an eating disorder. Nobody would have guessed that I was, seriously ill unless they'd have been very close to me.
So you didn't feel that you got the help from the NHS. Now, luckily, you were able to go into the private sector because you had some insurance and your work helped, I understand.
Yeah, my work was very supportive.
Yeah. So you were able to access private clinics, which were helpful.
It was absolutely fantastic. I mean, I must say that a couple of years ago, I did eventually get some help through the NHS through an outpatient referral scheme, which was a couple of hours a week for a few months, and that did help me a lot, but it didn't go far enough to treating the underlying problem. So yeah, when I went into the private sector, they were, it was incredible the help that I received. It was 6 weeks of inpatient care, completely going to the root of the problem.
Have they cured you? Can you be cured? Or is it always there?
I don't think that I'll ever be cured as such. I think it's something, the same as with alcoholism, it's something you could always go back to. And yeah, it's something that I think I'll be aware of. But, hopefully it's something that, I'm going to continue to deal with, and I'll get much better at coping things without using the eating disorder.
Do bulimics have the same sort of distorted body image that anorexics do? Do you think when you're in bulimia, do you think you're fat and you're overweight and you need to lose weight?
Very much so. I think all of the eating disorders, whether it's anorexia, bulimia, compulsive overeating, they're all very, very linked, and there's a lot of overlap between all of the eating disorders. So a lot of the things, go hand in hand with the distorted body image, and particular the feeling of wanting to be in control, which is a big, theme across people with eating disorders.
But you have come out the other side, and you're calling really for the NHS to provide more, and I suppose that means more money, and I suppose it's almost a bit of a Cinderella part of the service. Now I'm sure some people feel, well, these people bring it on themselves, so why should we spend money on it? Do you ever get the feeling that is being said?
Yeah, I do think so, and I think that is, part of the stigma that unfortunately is still attached with eating disorders, and I do think it's getting a lot better in the same that, most mental health issues, the stigma that is around them, I think is getting a lot less. But yeah, I'm sure a lot of people do think, well, you're doing it to yourself, why don't you just eat normally like a normal person? But unfortunately, as I've said, it's a lot more deep-rooted like that, and there's a lot of issues that go on behind the scene. So
here you are, well again, living with your disorder, but managing it, I suppose, is the best way of putting it.
Yeah.
And now you want to put something back, and you're climbing a mountain.
Yes, I am.
not metaphorically, but literally.
Literally, yeah. In a month's time, I fly out to Tanzania to take on, hopefully, summiting Kilimanjaro and race.
Which is quite high.
Yeah,
it's a big hill.
It's just under 6,000 metres in altitude, so it's pretty. Yeah, it's not exactly a small hill.
And you're doing it to raise money for?
To raise money for the eating disorder charity Beat, who have given me an incredible amount of support. Since I've come out of treatment, and they're really helping through their support groups to keep me on the straight and narrow, really.
Are you back at work? Are you functioning normally?
Yeah, I'm back at work, working full time, and having a normal life now, which, 12 months, 2 years ago, I didn't really believe could happen.
Well, I'll just tell you what the Department of Health has said. We did contact them yesterday. In a statement, they said it takes the issue of eating disorders very seriously, and in October announced a £170 million expansion of psychological therapies to provide better support. It says it's also funding a Pathway to Recovery project that provides a support network for people who have recovered from eating disorders. And the department also points out that the National Institute for Health and Clinical Excellence, NICE, is to review its clinical guidelines later this year. Maybe they'll look at that BMI index and decide that it's not the be-all and end-all.
Yeah, hopefully. Hopefully that would be fantastic if that was to happen.
Sam, good to talk to you. Good luck climbing Kilimanjaro.
Thank you very much.
I'm sure if you can beat bulimia, you'll climb that. It'll be like a walk in the park. Thank you very much indeed. Sam Russell from Tunbridge Wells, from Canterbury, sorry, telling us about her bulimia and how she's fought and won, and asking that the NHS does a bit more. 7:15. Okay, let's update the travel for you. Here's Steve.
Yeah, thank you, John. Morning to you. Not a great deal, actually, to tell you about at the moment. All main routes seem to be flowing okay. The rain's gone as well, which is some good news for you. Blackwall Tunnel is just one of the two things really on my radar this morning. Blackwall Tunnel northbound on the southern approach. We've got congestion back to Blackwall Lane, and it's slow on the M25 clockwise at Junction 5 down to Clackett Services, and then on to Junction 6 at Godstone. Then it kind of fans out, and then it's somebody else's problem because it's in Surrey. Apart from that, nothing else really here in the county to warn you about. M20 seems to be flowing okay so far. Haven't heard of any problems on the Thanet Way or on the M2 at the moment. We're continuing in Southborough on the A26 London Road, and in Larkfield on London Road, the A20 at New Hythe Lane. Southeastern, they're running a good service at the moment. We had one delayed train around 6 o'clock this morning, but everything else seems to be flowing well at the moment. And on the tubes, I'm afraid, we've got severe delays on the District Line this morning. That's because of a signal failure. All sailings from Dover's Eastern Docks for P&O Sea France and Norfolk Line, and on speed ferry services from Dover's Hoverport to Boulogne, operating schedule with space available. No other problems between Ramsgate and Ostend, and Eurotunnel and Eurostar looking good. Don't forget, if you spot something that I should be talking about, it's 08459 811111. I'm Steve Labner. Breakfast travel for you every 15 minutes.
Thank you, Steve. We heard Sam mention Beat there, the charity she's raising money for. They do have a helpline if any of these issues touch your life. It's 08456 341414. That's 08456 341414.
Dominic King in the morning.
Okay.